Hello friends, welcome back to TechServer Global. Hope you guys doing well. Today we are going to discuss on Microservice Project. In last video we have deployed one Java based project on the container architecture. Today we are going to set up one more project and it is basically include more than one technologies. So let's start with the brief diagram. So here you can see this is one eMart app architecture which include multiple technologies. So let's start with the API gateway. So API gateway, it includes the nginx and it having the multiple entry point like / API / web API. So basically when we browse any URL, it requires some web engine. So as a web engine or API gateway, we use nginx, one of the powerful web tool or web engine in the current scenario. So when we looking for /, it navigate to client and which include Angular as a technology. When we use for the / API, it denote or redirect request to eMart API, which include a Node.js, and as a Node.js required a MongoDB for the data transmission or as a database engine, and we validate for the / web API, then it navigate to Java as a book API, and Java required a MySQL database. In the previous video we have been validating only one application, which is Java, and use as a MySQL database as a database engine. But in this particular architecture we have the multiple technologies with multiple backend solutions. So let's start with the folder structure for the project. So this is my project. I have been take a reference from the one of the project, and it is a ready-made solution. Also I'm sharing my GitHub URL in the last, where I just fork my URL. You can fork that particular repository with your own repository. Okay, so let's start with the main file called docker compose.yaml. So I'm opening this particular project with the Visual Studio Code. So at least you guys having the more idea about the configuration of Docker Compose and different Docker files for each folder. Okay. So here you can see there are some folder as we have already seen in the last video. So let's start with the docker compose.yaml file. So in this scenario I have certain service. So let me just, okay, here you can see I have total 6 services, which includes first client. It tried to get a context from the .client folder. So when I just try to run this docker compose file, first it validate on the client folder, which is try to get a context from the ./client. Stands for the root directory, and this particular client will expose or run the application on port number 4200, and external for this machine for the my docker engine, it tried to open the 4200 port number. Container name with client you can change as per your requirement. Here one more concept called depends on. So when you provide a depends on name, it will start after this particular container been running. So when I run this compose file, it check with this particular client, it validate the context from this directory, or we can say the docker file from this particular directory, but it won't start before this particular two container been up and running. Okay, so let me expand this particular directory. This include the Angular source code as we have seen in this particular diagram. So client include the Angular. So I'm not going more detail on that particular what is defined in the Angular source code or what is this particular source directory. I'm opening this simple Docker file. So if we validate that particular client, it check out from the node 14, create a workdir /usr src app, then it will copy all the content to client directory. That means under node directory, or under node repo container, it will copying this all the source code within the /usr src app /client. Within client directory, all this content has been copied. Then it run the command by navigating to this client directory and npm install and npm run npm run build and -- prod. That means it's a environment variable. And here we can see this is the multi level, or we can say multi image docker file, as we have already seen in the last video. First, this command will execute on the node 14. Then once this command will executed, it use nginx latest image and copy this web build source code, this client distribution which has been generated after installing this npm install and npm run build. This build will copy to /usr share nginx and html, the default source code or the default directory for the nginx. Also it copy nginx configuration to nginx confd and default.conf. Here you can see the nginx conf. So nginx conf, I simple define a listen 4200 which we define on the docker file, and location path will be /usr share nginx html directory with index.html or index.html. Okay, and the error log pages. So this is default nginx configuration file. Now let me navigate to Docker Compose again. So this is my first segment of client. Now it depends on the API and web API. So let's expand API. So API simple build the context on folder called node API. So let me expand this node API and open the Docker file. So again in the node API, if you can see, node API /API will run on the Node.js and it required the MongoDB as a database. So again it tried to check out from the node 14 as a node API build workdir /usr/src/app. So all the content of node API will copied from /usr app to node API folder. Again it run the npm install. Again it copy from build to node API and expose over the 500. So if you don't know about the node API, you don't need to worry. You can contact with your developer who has this build this particular image or particular application. So he or she can guide you how this particular build API will be required and where we need to check out the repository and how it works. Also the command line utility to start the particular image, and this particular image will be exposed over the 5000. Okay, now again navigate to Docker Compose. Then we do have the API. This particular API is depend on the Nginx and eMongo. So again, up to whenever this particular API context has been checked, it will validate this container are up and running or not. If this is not up, then it will wait for that particular container is up and running, then this particular image or API will be up and running. Then we do a web API. It's a Java API and it's run on the 9000. So again, there is folder called Java API and it depend on the emart.db. Okay, so let me open this particular Docker file for Java API. Sorry, Docker file. Try to check out from the OpenJDK as a build image. It will run Maven and build the image and then copy that particular with the usr/src app directory. As a build image, it will copy that jar file to bookwork.jar file and it expose over the port number 9000. Then we do have the Nginx part. It copy the image from the Nginx, container name is Nginx. It copy the default.conf file to the Nginx conf default. So here we do have the Nginx and default.conf and it will simply copy port 80 and it will run the client URL which has been our Angular application. And the last one, eMongo. It is directly check out from the Mongo and environment name, container name is eMongo and database name is epoch, which has been defined with this application. And last one is MySQL, same as we have been validated on the last video. Image name is MySQL, version is this, container name is emart.db, port number 3306, environment variable is this. So now this multi-service or we can say microservice container application I am just going to up and running by simple docker -compose up -d. So automatically it will automatically up and running the all the container which has been defined in the composer file and running in the background. So it will pull the images and run the container. So it took some time, so I'm just pause this video and resume once this completed. Okay, so here you can see all the containers are up and running. So let me open this particular Docker desktop. So you can see there are multiple containers are up and running: eMongo, Nginx, emart.db API client and web API. So let me open this Nginx, the default URL. So here I just validate the e-commerce mart. This it's a dummy application. So you can use with the login or register by domain a particular email ID or anything. So this particular project is also known as microservice. So whenever we require to change anything on the particular project, you can simple check out the source code from the GitHub, then up and run the container again. So automatically that changes has been reflected to the URL. So in the modern day of the deployment, we need to be adopt the microservices architecture to handy made the deployment series and made easy deployment of any of the new feature branch. So hope you guys find well with this particular topic. Thank you for watching this video. Keep subscribe the channel and thank you very much.